What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we will be hopping into a 10-team full PPR mock draft for the 2023 fantasy football season. Today's format will be one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, one flex, kicker, defense, and five bench spots. If you guys do play in a double flex format, don't worry, I'll kind of talk about how to evaluate things from a double flex perspective as well. But other than that, guys, if you're looking for another mock draft for a different format, 10 teams, 12 teams, 8 teams, even double flex, single flex, whatever it may be sure to check out the videos we have on the channel. I have all kinds of mock drafts out so far throughout the off season. So if you guys are looking for another format, be sure to check out the other videos we've got, and be sure to subscribe on the way in if you guys are new to the channel. Whether you guys are new or not, do kindly ask that you guys also hit that like button on the way in. But most importantly, please drop me any comments, questions, concerns you guys have for the upcoming fantasy season down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So let's not waste any more time. Without further ado, let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so like I said, for the purpose of today's video, we are drafting from the 1.5 overall. So for me at the 1.5, we're either going with the best available running back or the best available wide receiver. No big surprise here. But yeah, seriously, I mean, if Tyreek Hill falls out here, you go Tyreek Hill, right? Cooper Kupp is here. You can definitely consider him. But I think at this point in the draft, we have to go Christian McCaffrey. Let's go hero running back. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. You know, are you going to see C-Mac fall to the 1.5 in your league? Well, maybe. I don't think that JJ, Chase, Hill, Bijan, C-Mac is a completely unrealistic order for the first round. But generally, you're probably seeing JJ, Chase, C-Mac, and then Bijan or Hill. But nonetheless, we'll take the value here for the purpose of today's draft. If you don't personally think Christian McCaffrey is going to be available in your league, then just note we're starting this draft with a hero running back strategy. But I will say, you know, for me, if C-Mac isn't there, it's probably Bijan who I'm taking, so we can still look at it as a hero running back perspective. And if those two guys are gone, well, that means Tyreek Hill is available, and we're starting this draft with a wide receiver. But nonetheless, let's just move forward with a hero running back strategy. So we're automatically looking to the wide receiver position at the 2.6. And for me, you know, whether you're playing a single flex or double flex format, I'm going aggressive at the wide receiver position for the next couple of rounds. So we're going wide receiver at the 3.5 as well. Ultimately, I think we're in a pretty good spot, right? I mean, we got great value at the 1.5, but let's go ahead and take a look ahead at who could be available realistically at the 2.6. Right now, some pretty good wide receivers on the board. Stephon Diggs is falling out a little bit in this draft. Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jalen Waddle all on the board. So we're literally just going to take whoever we think is the best value at that point in the draft. For me, I mean, I love the upside of Garrett Wilson. You know, the preseason touchdown grab has got me like even more hype for Garrett Wilson this season. So if he's there, yeah, I really like Devontae Adams right here. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. I don't think you can really go wrong with any of these wide receivers. We're going to get one of those three guys. We just take them off the board right here. So that's pretty easy. And then we can start to take a look ahead to the 3.5. So let's take the upside. Let's go Garrett Wilson, but you can't go wrong with Amon-Ra St. Brown at that selection either. Pretty good value at the wide receiver position for us nonetheless. I mean, we see Mahomes here in the second round. That's not crazy at all, guys. I mean, we've already ran 4 real drafts with the community so far here on the channel. Mahomes has gone at some point in the second round in every single draft. So even if a lot of the mocks you've done, you've seen Mahomes, you know, in the third, middle of the third, whatever it may be, realistically, someone's going to say, you know what, I'm going to go out, I'm going to take Mahomes more than likely. I mean, every league is different, every draft is different. But nonetheless, that helped us a little bit, and we were able to grab, you know, a wide receiver who could honestly end up going in the first round. Maybe not in a 10 team, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does. So nonetheless, let's move along to the 3.5. I want to take the best available wide receiver with that selection. We're going to hero running back. Like, we can take a pause from running back for some time. Don't get worried about it, guys. There's a lot of good value. Like, don't get me wrong. Henry, JT, Stevenson, Gibbs, ETN. There's a lot of good names that are available, but ultimately I want the wide receiver value here. I want Devonta Smith or I want Calvin Ridley. Like I want the number one wide receiver on the board in my eyes. T. Higgins is fine here as well, but I kind of prefer the upside from a Devonta Smith or Calvin Ridley. If they're not there, then we can go with T. Higgins. If we did want to go running back here, which I think it's fine to go hero running back. I think we're okay. I think we're still going to get good value, like I said. But, Jonathan Taylor does present a lot of upside. Obviously, at the time of recording this, a little bit of a gray area, but he's fine there. And then Gibbs is certainly another player who I really like in this spot as well. So, T. Higgins, Metcalf, Debo, Allen, Cooper. There are wide receivers that I like right here. But you know what? I do this all the time. I change up strategies. Let's go ahead and let's take Jahmyr Gibbs off the board. Let's pivot a little bit tonight. So we're no longer going hero running back. We're going to try a little bit of what I call a bounce back method. And, I don't mind Jonathan Taylor right there as well. I think there are a lot of you out there who probably might prefer Jonathan Taylor there. But already having the stability of C-Mac, I'll take the pass catching upside of Jahmyr Gibbs, and we'll run with it all day long. So let's go Gibbs there. No more hero running back. Scratch that. I do think a hero running back method would be fine. If I wanted to stick to that, obviously we wanted Devonta Smith or Ridley. If I wanted to stick to the hero running back method, Higgins would be fine right there. And I think even Amari Cooper is okay as well. But now we're in a position where we might be able to get Amari Cooper at the 4.6. We might not. We'll see what happens. But even if we don't, there's still a lot of wide receivers in that kind of same tier. So moving along to the 4.6, I do want to kind of come back to the wide receiver position. There goes Amari Cooper. You just never really know when he's going to be available or not available. His ADP is a little all over the place. But for me, I want DJ Moore at this next pick. I'm happy with Moore as a wide receiver too. I don't quite know that he's going to be there. There goes Debo. There goes ETN. And we'll see what happens here. But yeah, in this range, I still like Metcalf, Keenan Allen. You got Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, but I want someone who's going to give us a little bit of upside, potentially set us over the edge. I don't really want a safe floor, so I'd rather have DJ Moore. And yeah, I've talked about DJ Moore. If you guys go through and watch a couple of the mock drafts on the channel today, you're going to hear me talk a lot about DJ Moore. So I'm not going to go into my whole spiel, but essentially I do think that the passing attack for the Bears will improve this year. I do think Justin Fields will improve as a passer. And I do think that the Bears are going to be in a position where they're able to scheme up plays for DJ Moore, like we've seen a little bit of in the preseason. And I think he is going to have a very good year. But I have talked about him all offseason long since he got traded to the Bears. He's been a player that I have personally targeted. So, if you like another wide receiver there, just note you could go with another wide receiver. But, all right, we have really switched it up tonight. So now at the 5.5, unless there's a wide receiver there that I just feel like I can't pass on, I'm going to go ahead and take another running back. There are wide receivers that I like a lot right here. Brandon Ayuk and Christian Kirk are the guys that I'm eyeing. But there are two running backs that I really like as well. So if Ramondre Stevenson or Kenneth Walker are available and we can land them as our RB3, I'm okay with that. And when I do this kind of what I call a bounce back method, like we're going running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. If we went running back in the first round, if you went wide receiver in the first round, then you just kind of flip that, right? Go wide receiver, then running back, wide receiver, then running back, right? But when we're in a position to, utilize this strategy, sometimes you have to make a decision like, do I like the wide receiver value on the board more or the running back value? And I just think we're in the position to really get a good RB3. I don't prefer flexing a running back. I prefer flexing a wide receiver. But nonetheless, Ramondre or Walker right here, who I am, even with the Zeke trade, even with the little injury to Walker and them drafting Charbs, I love both of them in this range. So let's go Ramondre Stevenson. But if you did want to go wide receiver there, if you wanted to fill your flex spot with a wide receiver before going to RB3, which I think is okay, and if you do play in a double flex format, that's full PPR, that's probably what I recommend. But if you did want to go wide receiver there, there are some names here. Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, who a lot of people are a little bit more hesitant on at the moment. And some people are even hesitant on McLaurin with the toe injury. But Drake London, Christian Watson, Chris Godwin, who I think has really been being underlooked, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett. Like, we got a lot of names here. So, like, the other thing that you want to keep in mind here, like with us going running back there is a higher chance that one of those wide receivers falls out as opposed to one of those running backs falling. Like Walker or Stevenson was not going to make it back to us. So, the fact that we were able to get Stevenson, even with the Zeke trade at the 5.5 as our RB3, is phenomenal in my eyes. So I'm happy with that selection. But here we are moving on to the 6.6. We could go quarterback. Burrow, Fields, Herbert, Lawrence are all on the board. I don't want to neglect quarterback in a 10-team format. That positional upside does help if you can go out and get a top-tier guy. But I think we are potentially in a spot where at the 7.5, we can get a pretty solid quarterback. So what I want to do right here is take Christian Kirk if he's available. If he's not, then maybe we pivot and we go for the upside at quarterback and we go Justin Fields or Joe Burrow. But I think there's a small chance we can get Herbert or T-Law. I will say the teams in front of me, and there goes Burrow. I mean, there's exactly 3 teams without a quarterback, and they all have 2 selections before I pick. But yeah, I'm just not going to pass up Christian Kirk here. Wide receiver 3 on our team now, so we can move him into the flex, which in full PPR is what I prefer. But nonetheless, I mean, you look at this start, right? 3 stud running backs, 3 stud wide receivers. Anytime I go through with this strategy, like I still prefer a hero running back method or like a double wide receiver, then a hero running back in the third. But anytime I do this strategy, I just always end up with a team that I feel like is really even, like head to toe. And, for me, I'm really happy with this start nonetheless. But what do we want to do moving forward? Like I said, if we can get the right quarterback at 7.5, we have to smash the draft button, okay? But if not, I want to continue building wide receiver depth, whether you play in a single flex or double flex format. I still want a 4th wide receiver on my team that I trust, right? Because I want a 4th wide receiver in my second flex if it's a double flex format. If it's a single flex format, I want a wide receiver on my bench that I trust in case something happens to the other 2 or 3 wide receivers already on my team. I want someone on my bench that I can plug in at any point as my wide receiver 1 or 2 or in the flex. Bye weeks, injuries, these things are going to happen. So I want wide receiver depth. So that's something we're going to be taking a look at. There are a lot of good wide receivers on the board right now in this range. So, I do think like taking Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, Hollywood Brown, all those guys are worth considering here. And I'd argue even Jahan Dotson, McLaurin still available, but we'll have to see what happens. Yeah, we just missed out on that tier quarterbacks. Now we're kind of in a position where we can go with another running back if we wanted to, but I just don't think it's necessary. So for me, a lot of good wide receivers right here. A lot of good wide receivers right here. Tough pick. Tough pick. Godwin. I actually still like Godwin going into the season, but let's go for a little bit of upside. Let's go with Lockett. I think he's in a good position. I mean, like, you can go with any of those wide receivers. Godwin, McLaurin, Pittman, Mike Williams, Hollywood Brown, Lockett, whoever you guys like the best, I think is completely fine. I wanted someone who maybe brings a little bit of upside to the table, although I think Wilson and DJ Moore do. If this is a player in a double flex format who's going to be my second flex, or if this is a guy who's going to be kind of in between the bench and the flex spot, I wanted to be a player who brings upside. But I also really like Mike Williams right there, who I do think will have a better year than last year because hopefully he'll be healthy. And, this offense under Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator should improve, right? And I do think Mike Williams is a really solid pick right there. But if I was going to go running back at the 7.5, for me, it's David Montgomery. I just think he's going to be a touchdown vulture this year, have a good enough role within that offense. I don't mind Isaiah Pacheco right there as well. But, the other reason I went wide receiver there is because you can kind of pick what wide receiver you want. And I still think, regardless of, even if Pacheco and Monty both went off the board before we picked again at the 8.6, at the end of the day, this tier of running back is kind of interchangeable. Like, There are still other names here that bring value: James Cook, Javonte Williams, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon. So I'll take Monty here. That's our RB4. In redraft, I think 4 running backs is okay, especially in full PPR formats. And especially with this type of start where we've spent the draft capital early through the first 5 rounds with 3 running backs. Now we take a bit of a breather. Like, we can take an upside shot, a little bit later, maybe Zach Charbonnet, Devon Shane, Jerick McKinnon. And if not, we can take a handcuff. We can take Eli Mitchell or Tank Bigsby or whatever, Tyler Algier as our RB5. So what do we want to do now? Excuse me. I want to take another wide receiver. Call me crazy, but I do. There's good enough wide receivers available right now that I want to invest in one more. And then, yes, at some point we have to take a tight end and we have to take a quarterback. But we've already missed out on what I think is the 2 top tiers of quarterbacks: Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, then Burrow, Jackson Fields, Herbert, and T-Law. So I think we can kind of sit back. We are probably still in a position where we can easily draft Prescott, Watson, or Tua. And if you want a second quarterback behind any of those guys, whether it's maybe a little uneasy about how the Browns' offense is going to look, you're worried about Prescott and the interceptions last year, you're worried about Tua's injuries, whatever it may be, you can draft a second guy easily behind them, but I prefer not to, because that's going to take up an entire, spot on your bench, right? But for me, the player I'm looking at who could go easily, I mean, Team 3 and Team 4 only have 3 wide receivers, but Jahan Dotson being available right now, there's too much upside. I mean, Andrew is a great drafter, so I'm not surprised that he went. But I also really like Hollywood Brown right here. The question is, do we want to go ahead and just take David Njoku because we have pretty solid wide receivers? Or do we want to go for that depth and take Hollywood Brown off the board if he's available? If he gets selected here, then we just go in and get our tight end out of the way. Let's get Njoku off the board. Either way, I think we end up with a good value, good draft selection. I would have loved Dotson right there, but that's okay. All right, Hollywood Brown, happy with him right here. As our wide receiver 5, perfectly happy. 4 stud running backs, 5 wide receivers I'm happy with. Ultimately, now we want to take a look at the quarterback and tight end position pretty heavily. So there goes David Njoku. Now the question is, does Cole Kmet come to us or not? I mean, if you guys have watched my mocks throughout the offseason so far, I draft a lot of Cole Kmet, and I believe in him, in this range. You're tight end 7 last year. Like I said earlier, I already believe in the Bears offense going into next year. So I'm just a fan of Cole Kmet in these later rounds. I don't see any reason why, even with, less target share potentially with DJ Moore there now, I don't see any reason why Cole Kmet can't finish at worst as a top 10 tight end going in to this coming season. So he's been a guy that on a consistent basis I have taken in this range, and I don't have a problem with it. But, part of my strategies overall, kind of, if you don't get Kelsey at the right value, or if you don't just take him in the first, or you don't get Andrews at the right value, I just don't want to spend a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round pick on a tight end. I'm looking at Pat Freiermuth, Ingram, Njoku, Cole Kmet, potentially Dalton Kincaid, players like that in later rounds. And just for me, when you look at the point differential between like tight end 4 or 5 last year, all the way through tight end like 12 to 15, like there really wasn't a massive difference. So, if I can kind of take a breather, stack up at skill position players, or get a good value quarterback, I'm just going to do that before I'm taking a tight end earlier on in my draft. But nonetheless, if you are a little bit worried about going kind of late round tight end, you can draft 2 tight ends. I don't love having a second tight end on the bench, but I mean, like, if you can get Kmet and then get Dalton Kincaid, that's like a great looking tight end room moving into the year. You have a guy who should present some stability in Cole Kmet, and then a guy who presents a good amount of upside in Dalton Kincaid as well. All right, so moving into the 11th and 12th round, we still want to keep an eye on quarterback. Right now, there's some good options: Dak Prescott, Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Richardson, Cousins, Geno, Danny Dimes. Like, we still have a tier of quarterbacks to work with. We got tight end out of the way. The main player that I have eyes for right now is Khalil Herbert, just because I think he's a player available who brings the most upside, but he's going to get selected here. He's not going to be available for us. So we have one final bench spot, and I think you don't overthink it. You just go best available player. If you wanted to draft 2 quarterbacks, like if you're queasy about quarterback in this range, then you have to, reserve that second bench spot for quarterback. But The guy who I'm eyeing in this range, if Khalil Herbert's not there, well, there's actually two guys, Cortland Sutton and Romeo Dobbs. I mean, both these guys have wide receiver one value on their respective teams from a fantasy perspective because Dobbs can be that underneath PPR value, that guy who's there as a first read potentially, or, second read if Watson's not taking, the defense over the top or anything. Dobbs has been a top target for Jordan Love throughout the offseason, and I definitely think there's enough PPR value there. And then Sutton, last year, games he was healthy, double digits every game except for 4. So I really like Sutton in this range as well. What you have to do here is look and see, do I want to make my team with a build with 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers, or 6 wide receivers and 4 running backs? I think either way is completely fine. So let's go Khalil Herbert. I think he brings a good amount of upside for an 11th round pick. But if you want to go wide receiver there, Sutton, Romeo Dobbs are the guys that I prefer at this point in the draft. Like I said, whether you want to go 5 RBs, 5 wide receivers, or 6 wide receivers and 4 running backs, I think either build is fine. Now, moving into the 12th round, we're just going to take the best available quarterback, whether that's Dak, whether that's Tua, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Danny Dimes, whoever you want to pick, I think is completely fine. I do think that Dak and Tua are the best available options. And like I said, I mean, depending on when you're drafting, you can even just forfeit a kicker or defense and draft 2 quarterbacks if you're a little bit queasy about the quarterback position and you kind of want to fill your bench with as many skill position guys as possible. So far, I mean, most the Catch Fam tournament drafts have been a little bit earlier. We had 2 this past Friday and Saturday, then the other 2 the Friday and Saturday before that, and then every single league, I at least did not draft a kicker or defense, just took 1 extra skill position player or 1 extra quarterback, whatever it may be. So, depending on when you're drafting, just don't forget that. Like, it's not going to kill your season if, you don't draft a kicker or defense. At the end of the day, there are going to be options on the waiver wire. You can stream kicker and defenses. So, just keep that in mind as well. All right, so the 12.6, it's looking like we're going to get Dak or Tua. I mean, I think the upside lies with Tua. Maybe a little bit more risk with the concussions and everything. The floor lies with Dak. And don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, from a fantasy perspective, Dak is solid, but there's still a little bit of risk with Dak as well. Kind of have to look at it like, which offense do you think is going to be better this year? I think both will be fine. I think the upside lies with Tua. Don't really mind who you go with here. Rodgers is okay there, I guess, as well. And there are other names, like I just named a couple minutes ago, but Richardson, Cousins, Geno, Jones. Just take whoever you think is the best available quarterback. And then moving into the 13th and 14th round, to keep this a true mock, true to form, we're going to take the best available defense and kicker. So here's a look at the team. We pivoted strategies. We started with a hero running back strategy. And I just felt like Gibbs gave us the best upside in the 3rd round. And we pivoted to what I call a bounce back strategy, initially just switching between the running back and wide receiver position, or vice versa if you start with a wide receiver in the 1st round. So, like I said, if Smith or Ridley did come to us at the 3.5 here, we would have stuck to hero running back strategy. But sometimes you got to pivot. And that's what mock drafting is for, because ultimately, come draft night, you never know what's going to happen. So, C-Mac, Gibbs, Stevenson, Monty, Herbert. Love this running back room. Wilson, DJ Moore, Kirk, Lockett, Hollywood Brown. Love the wide receiver room. If we took one more wide receiver, it would have been over Khalil Herbert, and it probably would have been Sutton, but maybe Romeo Dobbs as well. I like both those guys right there. So we had an option there. Komet's our starting tight end. Tua's our starting quarterback. I am fine with that. It's a late round quarterback build. We considered and actually wanted to go quarterback at 7.5, but we just missed Herbert or T-Law. Almost made it, but nonetheless, I'm not saying go late round quarterback, but I just think if you don't hit those top 2 tiers between Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, you just hold off and you wait. And I think, getting Tua where we got him was perfectly fine. Could have gone Dak as well. We could still go Dak if we want to and forfeit a kicker or defense, but we're going to keep this true to form. And, whether you go defense or kicker first, I don't really care. But Daniel Carlson's been the kicker 1 in fantasy the last 2 years. That offense is basically in the same position it's been in the last 2 years. So I'll take Daniel Carlson here and we'll move right along, because You can always stream kicker, but you can always stream defense as well. So we'll just take the best available defense in the 14th round. But, those couple notes, we kind of pivoted from hero running back in the third. If Ridley or Smith if Ridley or Smith were there, we would have stayed at the 3.5 with a wide receiver. And not a lot about this draft would have changed after that. We still would have gone DJ Moore in the fourth. Still definitely would have gone Stevenson in the fifth, and probably would have gone Kirk still in the sixth. And man, that would have been a heck of a start. Maybe if we went Ridley, we don't go Kirk there. But regardless, this draft would still look pretty similar. And then, we probably wouldn't have drafted Lockett. We would have gone running back right there. But overall, I think a good draft. Like I said, I still prefer that quarterback in the 7th round, but I still think we pieced things together pretty nicely here. So our starting lineup would be Tua, Komet, C-Mac, Gibbs, Wilson, DJ Moore, flexing Christian Kirk. Ramondre Stevenson, Lockett, Monty, Brown, and Herbert on the bench. So a lot of pieces of the Bears. I don't always like to get oversaturated into one offense, but I do think they're going to have a good year this year, so that's fine. But great kicker, and you know what? We're landing a great defense as well in the Patriots defense. Your defense #1 last year, so a great way to wrap up the draft with some great options at kicker and defense, even though we didn't put a value on them whatsoever. Guys, don't draft a kicker or defense before you draft your final skill position players. Always fill out your bench with skill position guys before you draft a kicker or defense. You can always stream kicker or defense. Nonetheless, we got good value tonight. So that'll do it for today's mock draft. If you guys are looking for a different format, if you guys are looking for a different draft position, I have a ton of mock drafts out for the season. Before September 7th, before the season kicks off, I will have a mock draft up for every draft position for 8-team formats, 10-team formats, and 12-team formats. Guys, we go live almost every single night here on the channel. Be sure to hop into one of our live streams. You guys can ask me any fantasy questions, and I will answer them on live air for you guys. Other than that, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns for the upcoming fantasy season, be sure to drop those in the comment section down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you guys found today's video helpful, be sure to hit the like button on the way out. And that'll do it for today's video. So with that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.